Okay, everybody. I hope I'm joined. It's 7 o'clock on the dot. My name is Richard Jones, RN. Introducing myself. Tonight's event is going to be strengthening outcomes, and I've labeled it a breakthrough framework for young adults, young adult recovery, and real world execution. So, if you're here with me, thank you very much. Listen, I think I'm on live. My event says that I'm not started yet. So we will wait a little bit to see when it starts. Okay, it is starting right now. Okay, excellent. Um, I want to thank the people that have come. And I got a list here. Got psychiatrists, admission directors, physicians, coaches, counselors, therapists, consultants, probation officers, peer recovery specialists. Everybody's here. And what I want to talk to you about is a mindset and a particular process that we have been using to strengthen outcomes from practitioners. So we're not going to waste time. We're just going to get right to it. So going to the second slide. Listen, I call it a patient fortification strategy. And the reason why I call it that is because, we'll get to it. I got a who, a what, and a why there. I want to start with the why. It's very important because I think the why will help me explain the who and the what. To tell you a little bit about myself, I come from a correctional background. Uh, in the correctional facility, there is a little place called the Sally Port. It's in between the main area of the jail where the inmates stay and the outside, little place where the lawyers sit down and talk. And in that area, that's where the essence of this patient fortification started coming to me. It's brewing to me. And how it started was I would sit down. I gave myself the task. I was a director of nurses at that time. I gave myself the task of working with the young people that came into jail. Okay. And later on, when I talk more about me, I'll tell you how this all came about. But at this time, I'm seeing these young people at the jail. And what struck me the most is that when I would have a conversation with these young people, I would find that at that moment when they were speaking to me, when they had just got arrested, there was a sense of terror, a sense of confusion, and just a sense of needing and wanting help. And the reason why I noted it so much because over time I noticed that if they repeat it, they wouldn't have that anymore. And there was a threshold that they went through. So I said to myself, these young people, really have the ability to be on a much better path, but circumstances obviously have led them there. And I knew by talking to them and meeting them, I knew that some of them had great talent, some of them had insight, and some of them were just in a bad situation. Some of them were in a situation, an unfixable situation. And I started to really get curious about what was going on. It was something to me that really started to bug me after a while. And when I get later on in my story, you'll kind of see why. So at that time, I'm thinking, okay, when I see these young people come, I know that when they leave and come back and leave and come back, I know that we are not doing anywhere near a good a job as we need to be with these young people. We're not getting through to them. We're giving them services, but we're not getting through. Why not? The obvious things came to me. Of course, there's obvious reasons why we're not getting through to them. That's obvious, but what's the problem? What can we do better? And as the registered nurse, I was in charge, obviously, of making sure that they got their mental health services, their medical services, social worker taking care of them, and helping their plan of care and working with them because we did that for the young adults, and which, like I said, I put myself in charge of that. And I was very confused about why I had some excellent practitioners, people who could charge large amounts of money an hour in real life. And we couldn't get through to these kids at all, And a lot of them, I think, really from conversations with them, really wanted to be gotten through to. They really did. Oh, by the way, here, I don't know if I'm getting comments or not, because I cannot see that. So if you have something to say it in the chat in the LinkedIn, and we'll sort it out later. So at that time, I was worrying about two things. Now I'm worrying about the young person. Okay. I'm worrying about my practitioners who are basically ice skating uphill. And I understand that they would get used to it. And sometime I would see frustration. Sometime I would see resignation. Sometime I would see, going through the motions, all different types, everybody. Most of the people I knew and worked with, the practitioners, were really good. And all you guys that's on this list, and working with you with these young people, I knew that they were actually very, very good at their job. So what could I do to make this better? And at this time, I'm still figuring it out. So I've got two people now. I've got the young person and these young people with high potential, I think. Even though they're in a bad situation, they had a lot of potential. I have my practitioners, or basically ice skating uphill in some ways. And then I had family calls. I talked to many parents, and the level of upsettedness and surprise, guilt, pain, resignation, all those different things, it really started to become an obsession with me at that time. And still at that time, not knowing what I was going to do with it, but just obsessed with it. It went from just taking mental notes to actually jotting down notes to actually then going out to talk to these younger guys who had came on their first time and then came back on their second time, seeing their differences of opinion, seeing how they took it and how they were, either progressing or regressing. And I was really starting to put that together in a framework and really be just curious about, what we could do. I want to basically give you the menu for today. I'm gonna go through this as quick as I can, so try to stay with me. The first thing I want to do is talk about the gap and the problem, where I see the gap and where I see the problem. This is mostly, how I feel about this, but where I see it. I want to go to my story, and I promise I will not ramble on too long about that. Okay. We want to talk about the solution. The solution that we have named leverage-based tapered life management. We'll go through that. We want to talk about the process of what that is and what it means for you practitioners. I want to talk about what I call the results, the satisfaction, and the endorsement. Very important. And I also talk about what we can do. I think that we can do to work together. And I think where I can really step in and aid in, your fortification of your patient status, your client status in these areas. And I'm talking about, as you see, young adult, I'm talking about ages 17 to 24. Have we worked with 16, 15-year-old before? Yes, but mostly 17. And have we went to 25, 26 sometime, but around before 25 and at or after 17 is around the wheelhouse that we like to work in. So let's just move on with that. And I'm going to just go straight screen here, coming up here now. The first thing is the gap in the problem. Okay. I feel like in trying to raise the level and the percentage of young people we help in those detrimental situations, and I'm talking about my initial interest was the correctional side of it. But also, I've worked recently in drug and alcohol with the young people also. And it's the same for me. My feelings about it were the same in the part that I wanted to help. Remember, I'm talking about working in a non-clinical way. And that was very important to me because I always was a respecter, even though I knew that we weren't doing what we needed or wanted to do in that area. I was always a great respecter and still am of all my, the professionals that worked along with us. As a nurse, I always thought that was my job to make what you professionals did work better, be stronger, and get better results. So to me, that was always, very important to me. I wanted to also make the practitioners and understand that it's not our fault when these things are going wrong. So many times when we have a problem like this, everyone wants to say, well, if we just did better, if they would change this. I'm not a big believer in that. I'm thinking that most of you professionals are really doing a great job. And the system moves and improves as fast as it can at the pace that it can. So I do not think that complaining or trying to alter the system of what you did, grossly was the answer to this problem. Should we always work on improving the systems? Yes, of course we should. But I didn't think that what we were doing was so wrong, but yet our results were so wrong. And I felt as though, a lot of times they'll say, well, the recidivism rate or the relapse rate is about, you hear 20%. I think, first of all, I think that's generous. If you're there on the lines, you know that it's very difficult to get through to these young people in these stages because, a lot of our system is set up not to get their complete attention. So, and also the world is increasingly complex. We can't get around that. The world is increasingly complex. And that's not going to change ever. So we're talking about a couple things that aren't really going to change. The system, resources, the complexity of life, these things are not going to change. So what can we do to improve uh, our results with these young people? Again, it was something that really, meant a lot to me at the time. Let me tell you about my story to help get you perspective before I go into it. I called myself the accidental nurse because when I very first started, I came out of the United States Air Force and I went to our local community college and I was going to pursue a career in, industrial glass blowing and industrial glass. That was what I wanted to do. I had a cousin who was a glass blower. That was what I wanted to do. They had a great program. I was really invested in getting into that program. Well, a week before the program was supposed to start, I was booted out for an industrial client and had to go on the waiting list. And I said I couldn't start till next year. But, I was ready to go to school. I got out of the service, I was ready to get moving. I was kind of despondent and didn't know what I was going to do. My mother came to me and told me, why don't you consider the nursing program? Well, my mother was a nurse. My grandmother was a nurse. I had no idea literally what they did for work. I didn't know. Didn't really care. The young person running around. I knew she took people's temperatures and I knew there were sick people. Past that, you couldn't have told me anything. I didn't know. Um, so uh, she introduced me to a couple of male nurses because I felt like men nurses. I didn't know what was going on at all. That's how far away I was. But after talking to them and taking a look at the field, I decided to give it a try. And 39 years later, just retired from actual physical nursing work about 2 months ago, but that's how long it lasted. So that whole nursing career was an accident. In my early years as a nurse, I was really intrigued with not just my nursing career, but I was intrigued with the self-help industry. I was fascinated with Tony Robbins and all them. And not so much for the wealth building, but just for the the how they altered people's states. Became a student of it. I listened to them talk. I listened to what they were saying, how they were saying it, what results they were trying to get from people, how they motivated people, and I got to be, sort of understanding it. So here I am. I had my nursing career at the same time. And then I'm starting with this self-help mentality. And at that time, not knowing how I was going to blend it into medical, but I knew that I wasn't sure how much they helped those people make money like they told them to, but I did know that they were great at altering their state. And as a nurse, that's one of the things I wanted to do was help to alter and improve people's state, not just the physical part, but also the mental part. Come to the second accident. The second accident. Uh, I had been in geriatrics for about 15 years. And I really loved the old people. I really did. Geriatrics was I loved it. I just had a thing for the old people. I had a good hand at it. And my local county had an opening for the director of nurses at the local county jail. And I was asked what I consider the position. I, again, did not know anything about what was going on. I barely knew that they had nurses at the jail. I never even thought about it. I knew the jail was over there, but it never even occurred to me. And here I was going from not knowing anything about it to within 2 weeks starting at the correctional facility as the director of nurses. Interesting. It's a good thing I had a really good crew of LPNs there who were seasoned and took me under their wing and taught me the ins and outs of the job. But during that time, as I said before, my first why, that's when I, giving myself the job of worrying about the young 17 to 24-year-olds and making sure they were settled in properly, documenting on them, making sure that there was no trouble with them and they weren't being any type of bullying and their health concerns were taken care of. This is when I started to cultivate this interest in the young people. I saw how they had that challenge between wanting to be tough, being afraid, wanting to be independent, but being dependent. There was so many things that were gone with them. And I also saw the big deal when they would come in the first time. And then if I saw them again, and if I saw them the third time, each time they would degrade and lose more of that sense of, being able to come out of it. And I said, if there is a window here that we have that we need to work with these young people. So I immediately start thinking, what is that window? What does that timeline look like? And at this time, I'm really still just sort of brewing this theory around in my mind, So anyway, eventually, near retirement and working and doing so many interviews with them, I started to formulate what I thought was a solution. And eventually, this solution took a framework and a mindset. And in order to discuss what I was talking about with people, conferring with it, I had to give it a name. So I gave it the name that fit what I was doing. And we called it leverage-based tapered life management, which is interesting because I was told that it sounded like LBGQ, and I said, well, it's fine what it sounds like, but right now we want to talk about what we're doing. So secondly, in the solution, I realized that part of the solution was understanding and knowing that, our best was good enough. Our best was going to be good enough. And excuse me. Yeah. Our best was definitely going to be good enough. Pardon me. We're going to get to the right slide here. And I didn't need to try to change or downgrade practitioners, which is where, when I first started it, I had people tell me, well, if they would do this or do that. I said, that's not the answer. That's not the answer. Our best right now, what we're doing is good enough. All we have to do is basically expand the way we look at this problem, accept the challenge of decreasing the relapse rate and decreasing the rate of recidivism without blaming ourselves and blaming each other. So that was very important to me. How do I come up with a solution? And so I wanted to talk about, in leverage-based tapered life management, what's the process? Okay. The process is what I like to call a non-clinical, and this is most important, non-clinical. I thought it was very important to think about this in a manner that highlighted my practitioners, highlighted what they did, how they did it, but also helped them to understand that when the cliche is meet patients where they're at, when we meet where they're at and they're in a really bad place, it's not so easy to drag them along with just information or just telling them what should be the best for them. So we had to think of another way to do it. We came up with a non-clinical dual track. Okay. Non-clinical dual track. And what I mean by dual track, we'll talk about this a little bit later, is with a dual track, I'm working with two groups of people at the same time. Okay. I'm working with the young adult. Okay. And I'm working with his support system. dual track. We're working with them separately. So bear that in mind as we go on through this process, okay? And it's a prompt to action intervention. In other words, we use different types of verbal, media, and all types of different cues at different times in order to prompt reaction and interaction and intervention. And we deliver that with a really what we call a proprietary algorithm designed especially for second thoughts. And it's designed to install a self-refueling, sustainable life management system. I know that's sort of a mouthful, but follow me, stay with me, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And it had to be tailored specifically, okay, to the goals and visions of each family that we were working with. So the system came in three parts. System comes in three parts, okay? And as we get leverage-based tapered life management, the missions of intent. In other words, what are we trying to do in order to make this happen? In order for me to help, in order for me to give the practitioners and the families a much better chance at success with this, what do I have to encourage? What do I have to strengthen? And I came up with a framework of three different things. 3 pillars of transformation, which we'll go over, okay? 4 pillars of delivery, how we implement this, and 7 core principles, the mindset that moves behind it. Very important. Okay, let's go over the 3 pillars of transformation really fast so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. The first one is therapeutic comprehension. Now, therapeutic comprehension is very important for me. What therapeutic comprehension is that taking everything, every asset that we have to work with this young person, starting with the practitioners, okay, starting with all the information, starting with the resources, everything that we have that we at our disposal to work with this young adult. And then what we wanted to do was we wanted to make it better, monitor it, make sure that the absorption was as high as it possibly could. We didn't want to waste anything that we had going for us was a waste. I thought that picking the low-hanging fruit, the common sense way was, what do we got working for us and how can we make it better? Because most of the time young people were getting great information, great teaching, great everything. Practitioners bringing in, top quality treatment. But the problem was we were meeting them where they were, and we were not able to bring them along because of the distraction. So therapeutic comprehension was a system that took all those things, monitored them, made sure that they absorbed, and while doing it at the same time, isolating and eliminating distraction. That was very important. So I molded those two together. We want to increase the absorption of what we had available, and we wanted to also then augment that with a decrease in distraction. The goal was to hijack their attention, because I knew that attention was everything. Attention was what got them in this problem. It's just that the wrong things and people were getting their attention. So if we could find a way using the same methods that the wrong things got now, the same methods, we could start to steal back that attention piece by piece. And we really only had to get it pushing in the right way when it came to stealing attention back and comprehending, the therapies and all those things. We only had to push it back the other way. We didn't have to hit the home run. It wasn't necessary. It really wasn't necessary. But what we had to do was we had to move them gently in that direction. And when I say move them in that direction, I mean not by a hack, but by just and letting them and everybody know that's exactly what we are doing. Okay. The second thing we had to do was we had to change the way we looked at the support network. The support network, as we saw it now, was basically a situation of guilt, shame, and blame. Not by anyone's fault. The nature of families and support people are basically a nature of love for the most part. When I talk to a lot of families, even through all the frustration and anger and disappointment, there was still a base of love, but that was not able to show through. And I found out that for this system to work, what we had to do was find a way around that. I didn't need to think about how I was going to get the family to work through their problems and that type of thing, because We had practitioners say, I was always in mind of working with the things that we have. I have social workers, I have practitioners. We have that available. We have counselors and we have therapists. Let them do their work. What can we do to help them? So we figured out a new way to increase the enhancement. That was part of that dual track. How could we give them what I thought they really needed? And what the young people really wanted was that foxhole mentality. They really didn't want to go over and rehash what they had done wrong, all of their mistakes, and go over it with somebody. That's not what they wanted. Was there a time and a place for that? Yes. But again, therapists, counselors, we have a lot of people to help them with that. Let them do their work. Let's augment their work. So we created a system that helped multiply that foxhole mentality, reduce the guilt, shame, and the blame. Extremely important, as a matter of fact. So we also wanted to develop a new type of accountability system, and not the I'm mad at you, you done something wrong accountability system, but a new type of accountability system that was forward leaning. Okay. The accountability system is built into the process of leverage-based tapered-like management, and it's all about increasing awareness and increasing that partnership between your support network and where eventually we want to get that young person. And the last one was a self-refueling transformation. This was very important to me. We weren't going to get anywhere unless we made it clear from the very beginning that what we were about and after was a transformation. Instead of trying to sneak it on them or tell them this may be good for them or schedule this, I wanted to let them know from the very beginning, hey, we are after a transformation. And the transformation had to be refuelable. It had to be self-refueling, because a system that depended on the continual hand holding would not be effective. Okay. A system that didn't provide a mechanism to sustain that transformation would not be useful. So we wanted to think of a system now that could sustain a transformation. So those three pillars of transformation, very important, very important. Now, we're talking about the 4 pillars of delivery. And what I mean by that is, what are the things that we needed to actually know? What did we have to help on to that, we could do separate from our practitioners, that could help our practitioners? Okay. And in a non-clinical sense, because I was very, very intent on keeping this in a non-clinical, mentality or mindset. So we went to 4 things. The first thing, agency and ownership, the very basis of agency and ownership, which we used in the content, in that the algorithm of how we delivered content. One of the basis of information that we would use for that is something very simple. There was no need to do a lot of teaching, because again, we have practitioners for the teaching part and the real information. What we were trying to do is provide a sense that gave a base for teaching and a sense to increase absorption. And the best thing to do that was a sense of agency. And we really basically patterned most of that content after the book, The Power of Agency by Dr. Paul Napper. I was able to talk to him one time and gave me some good insights, and we really started to put that into place throughout. And I'll tell you a little later how we, sprinkled that in. The second thing was communication. We worked on communication. In this algorithm, we worked on communication daily, multiple times a day, which we'll discuss, okay? The third pillar, organization and planning. The very important organization and planning. And that doesn't mean telling them how to use an organization or planning system, although that is part of it. But what we really wanted to do was give them a sense of what organization and planning was, and allow them to have the input on creating an organization and planning methodology, something that could be truly theirs, that they could own. So not so much teaching them a particular style, but what it was about, and then work with them and mold what their style of organizing and planning was. But that was necessary, one of the 4 necessary things. And the last one I thought was very necessary was post-program preparation. It was invaluable, okay? Anybody can go through any kind of program. Okay. And we did not plan on a hand holding after this. This is going to be a strict program, 90 days. So we had to build it so that they were mentally prepared to take this out where live fire was coming, where live temptation and all the things that had taken and distracted them and caused them to go and made it difficult for them to absorb the help in what the practitioner was available. This is what we needed to do. So what we did was we came up with, that was the fourth pillar of delivery. Okay. And the last was the 7 core principles. Now, this is the mindset behind leverage-based tapered life management. Okay. This is the mindset behind it. And these 7 things sort of gave us the direction that we wanted to go with the young adult and the families. We put that dual track together. Okay. First thing was direction. Direction had to be emphasized in more than just one way. It had to be emphasized in a visual way, in a mental way, in an action sort of way, in an inevitability way. We had to make direction a cornerstone to where we were going with this. We always wanted to let them know we are heading toward a extremely specific goal here. Okay. And so direction was part of it. Okay. Secondly, we had to be customized. Any cookie cutter type of approach could not work. Okay. Cookie cutter approaches don't work. And this is why one of the reasons why we have so much failure. They don't work. Okay. We needed to have a general process, but inside of it, make it customizable. So that was very important to me. Leverage support. What we had to do was really increase the ability for a support network to have influence over the young person. And the traditional ways it was being done is not working. So we needed to take new ways of getting the power and the respect from the young person, from his support network. So leverage support was very important. Okay. Detrimental procrastination is something that we came up because we wanted to know that we wanted to give a list of things and items that, should not be missed. In other words, the things that they need to do. So we started putting those together in the program. Okay. Another one which was very important to us was immediate course correction. The analogy or metaphor for me, as however you want to put it, was the fact that it doesn't matter what I tell you we're going to do. Okay. If I wait long enough in between when we told you and when it's time to do it, or when it's time to do it and I try to now express accountability for it, we have enough time. We have time for mindsets to change. We have time for inertia to set in. We have time for wrong influences. So what we needed to do was really stay on top of direction. And when direction went off even a little bit to a certain degree, we needed to correct that course, sort of the sailing a ship in the seas, never goes straight. It always corrects right, corrects left, corrects right, corrects left. We needed to take that mentality to this system. Okay. We needed to implement something that we call, and this is proprietary to leverage-based tapered life management. It's called frequency and consistent variation. In other words, anything cannot be static. Even the delivery of a program cannot be static. It must come from all directions, eliciting many different types of responses. Okay. Timing must be changed up, back, forth, down. In other words, to keep attention and to keep and build anticipation. Because once we can build anticipation and multiply that with attention span, now we are starting to be able to start moving toward a transformation. And the last but least was lifelong learning. The fuel that makes a self-refueling transformation possible, lifelong learning. So that is also implemented in the project. So those are the 3 basic things. So we talked about dual track. The dual track, again, very important. I thought the dual track was very important because we needed to have the young adult programming and we needed to have the team building aspect of it with the support network. So if we can get a main support person to come in now, and then with them, help them to now build a support network of people who are not interested at all in what went wrong. Again, I have, for their drug use, for their behavioral issues, for their, anything like that, we have professionals for that. That's not what we need out of our support network. What we need of our support network is support. So we teach them how to build a new type of support network and run that support network, how to build it, how to manage it, how to evaluate whether it's going properly or not. And this, in the long term, will make the transformation a lot firmer. So it's a dual track. Okay, very important. Let's talk real briefly about the actual program, so you have some idea of what's going on here. Program is a 90-day program. It's really quite simple as that, and it's a 90-day program based in 5 parts. The first part is the 48-hour part. Now, as you see on the screen, I have 48 hours and I have 15%. Well, the reason why the 15% is there is because one of the tenets of leverage-based tapered life management is not just are we trying to get to a certain transformation, but we're trying to do it in a extremely fair and respectable way to the families. So we'll get to those percents later. First 48 hours, that's when we initiate the program. Okay. We give them a great idea of how the program is going to go. Within that 48 hours, they get about 8 contacts from us throughout 2 days, in which we show them exactly how the program is going to work. They'll be well versed within those 2 days of exactly the feel for the program. Okay. Past what we talked about before we started the program. Most important part about that first 48 is that program is not initiated till we get through that first 48-hour period. Because what we want to know, and what's most important, is that the family is comfortable with what we're doing, and we all understand that we are on the same page. After, and only after we get through the first 48 hours, the family, the network is comfortable. Then we initiate the program, and that will include a payment or something to pay for the program. But we will not take, we made a concerted effort not to take a nickel from anyone until they were completely satisfied with that first portion. Once they thought they were on the way, we felt like we had a good start, we could start. First phase, day 1 to day 30, we call the inceptive phase. In other words, we go really heavy on the agency, we go heavy on the agency and ownership portion of it, really building a strong foundation through our multiple daily contacts, using the algorithm that we use in order to give a prompt and response methodology. That first 30 days, that's what we are basically working with. Okay. Phase 2, days 31 to 60. Building phase. During that phase, we continue the agency and ownership portion. But along with that, we are building a project now. And this project is extremely customizable to the young person that we're dealing with. We acquire a project, we deliver a project, we go through the goal-making portions of the project, we go through the responses, we go through the results, and we run that building phase, okay, throughout day 31 to day 60, working on methodologies and what phase. And a lot of times for some people, we use different things. We like to use entrepreneurial based type things because that gives them a mindset, and it's really easy to set goals toward that and see results, really tangible results. So that's what we use most of the time. Some people have projects that they already want to use, but for the most part, that's been very good. And of course, on day 20 and day 40, those are also partial payments. In other words, this only goes piece by piece. And we'll get to why we do that in a little bit. Third phase, the preparatory phase, preparation phase, excuse me, day 61 through 90. In that phase, we are going through now all 3 things: agency, ownership. Okay. We're going through the building phase. And in the preparation phase, we go through all those things. And we also prepare now the care plan and base plan and accountability plan for days 91. okay, through a 30-day time period. And they set up their plan, they set up their accountability system and everything. So we go through ultimately a straight 120 days of this methodology, okay? And after day 90, we go into what we call the last 48, and that is basically a debrief, okay? And in that debrief, we basically debrief that on where we're going from here, where they plan to be, and we also debrief what went on in the building phase in case that project needs, any more help from any of our outside people. We have a couple people that will come in and help us with that building phase in case they need an entrepreneurial project. Okay, so have someone help me with that. So, and if there's any problems with that, but basically like that's where we're ready to go. This part is important for me. Results, satisfaction, and endorsement. One of the things I found that very early was that we had to control the narrative and we have to control expectations. This system is built on a no man left behind mentality. So we swing for the fences in this system. We let everybody know, the family go, this is not, well, it may work and it may not work. We go all in throughout the entire process is an all-in process between the young adult and through the support network. Everyone is all in, okay? Because during that time, the support network will be building. That support person will build a network. Each week, an extra person is added into that network, and they will receive reports about how that person is doing with their prompt and responses. Not specifics, but just did they meet time quotas and are they still in regular engaged? It's not important. We do not share the information from what we do with the young person to what we do with the support network. If their family wants to do that, that's fine, but that's not what we do. We run it dual track, very important. And we want them to understand that expectations, we have to run those. The satisfaction and the endorsement all come in the payment system. The payment system. In other words, what we will not do is we will not move forward at any time unless the whole team is on board. And if one part of the team falters, does not meet a time goal, the entire program stops dead on a nail, and stops. And we get everybody back together and we try to find out where we're at. And then we move forward. This is not a program where it can be taken care of and done. And then we look back and, well, it was a waste of time. And they just went through it. Like, unfortunately, a lot of our rehabs and things, and we get done and we say, well, I guess they weren't ready. In leverage-based tapered life management, they're ready from the beginning. And each step, we make sure that they are ready. Because the most important thing that we are trying to establish here is giving them the sense that they have the ability to manipulate their environment and their life. The ability to conceive, okay, evaluate and conceive and make promises to themselves, and the ability to keep those promises. And this is the weightlifting, the exercise that they are able to do that teaches them how to manipulate their world and to multiply their results with all the other help now that they're getting, to absorb and be aggressive now, instead of just thinking about having to go to a meeting or having to continue in their aftercare programs or anything like that. They're aggressive about it now. They're looking for ways to make it better and make it stronger, because that is the mentality that we deliver in the program. Extremely important. So, no results, no charge. Family is never treated to anything but results, okay? Privacy is maintained at always. We at Second Starts, we do not give out information about our people in any way. If they want to talk about it, that's fine. We do not use and say, well, look how many people we did. Each person is different. Each person's expectations are given and delivered to them with the family when we start the program. Those are the only expectations we care about. What was done with someone else beforehand means nothing. Absolutely nothing. Okay. This is an all-in process. Okay. And it goes piece by piece. So they will not be left behind. It's very important. Okay. what can you do, and why am I um, putting this on, this first one anyway, because we're going to have some more. But this first one's let you know, basically, we are looking for referral opportunities. We are getting some really big things coming very soon on the horizon. Very excited. As a matter of fact, the beginning of the, next year, we've got some talks with some municipalities. Okay. One in a state, one in another state to start off with, to see what we can do to pick them up with some group programs in order to help them with their young people in some of their programs, and see if we can reduce their recidivism and relapse rates in some of their programs. So we can work with some government officials. We're going to be working later on in the next year with doing some um, affiliate programming where we actually teach this methodology. So we've got some people on board with me to help me out with that. And they tell me we're going places. We'll see how that goes. Kind of excited about it though. So we're going to open this up to like referrals from you guys that I have on this, type of call, because you see these people. And this is not, as I repeat, this is not an interference at any way with what you're doing. This is something that we do to strengthen and multiply your results. And that's the key here. Strengthen and multiply your results. Okay. It's a patient fortification system, clear and present, patient fortification. So in this referral program participation, all levels, whoever comes on as a programmer, okay, you all receive a personalized landing page for internet use. Wherever you want to send someone there, it comes on and it's your personalized landing page, but it's for the program. We'll produce that for you. Okay. We'll also, at your request, if you need scannable business cards or brochures or anything like that, we can produce those for you and have them given to you upon your request. And all participation is subject to client approval. So even if you do suggest someone, but they're not willing to have any information at all given to you, then obviously we can't do that. But if they're down with it, then we can easily do that. And there's certain levels that we will work with you on. Okay. First level is just the referrals only. Okay. And any type of notification or whether they join the program, and that's optional between you and the family. Okay. The second level, okay, program monitoring with optional content input. Very important. Understand you'll be able to get some information on how the program is going, how the accountability system is moving forward. And in some of the teaching phases that we use in the algorithm, we have spaces available for content that a provider may want to include. So very important that if there is some content that we can in the algorithm, we can put some of that content inside of the algorithm in the teaching phases. Okay. And level 3 is program monitoring, of course, the optional content input, and the accountability performance participation. And what that means is you or someone in your office becomes part of that accountability or support network accountability system. And you are, included in the information and the report card per se of what is going on and the timing of what is going on. You'll be included with that. And the last phase, which we talk about very specifically, is some practitioners to this point already, ones I've been working with from the beginning, have taken ownership of the program and basically have us implement this for one of their people that they are treating, and they handle the pricing part, still delivered in the same way. We insist on that 15, 28, 28, 28% delivery. It's part of the mentality. It's part of letting the support network understand exactly how we're all in. This is a team affair. This is a team effort, and it's a team effort built not to lose. That's most important. A team effort built not to lose. So those levels of push. So in conclusion, and I hope I didn't stumble over my words too bad. I want to let you know that we're going to be doing more of these. I think right now, the 17th, we may come back with another one. And we want to go into the 3 pillars of transformation. And then we'll do another one on the 4 pillars of delivery, and another one on, the 7 core principles. And we'll do those so we can expand on them and give you an idea of really what the mindset is and talk more about the actual program itself and how it's implemented. This is just to go over and let you know sort of what the mindset is. Okay. So if you have any questions, please send me a message on LinkedIn. Just send me a message. Hey, I want to know more. We can either set some up or I can send you some written information or whatever I can do to let you know, to give you an idea. And you can reach me at my email, which is my personal email. And it wouldn't be the personal email except for right the day we were trying to do this. Obviously, something went wrong with my Google Workspace. So we're going to go with this email for now. But so feel free. I'm going to let you know that Second Starts is comprised of 2 parts. First is parentingyourchildinrecovery.com. And that is basically aimed at the families, and giving them a leg up or some information on what they can do to start this program. And these are the families of young adults at risk. We like to say at risk, actually in trouble, or actually receiving or in some type of treatment or monitoring or counseling with one of you. Either way, it all works that we can come in at any time. The only thing we don't do is we do not interfere with any of your clinical processes at all. We do not interfere with anything. We only strengthen it. And the last one is the Kingmaker program. And in the Kingmaker program, it's basically the same program, except for the language is different and some of the content is different because we are dealing with, failure to progress young adults, and we work more with people who are looking to improve, looking to potentiate the abilities, and that same information and that same mindset, okay, and that same agency ownership, building planning, those same things move for them too. We just do it in a little different way, and the building program is a little different, but it's the same thing, and they both come out of SecondStarts.com. So we're working those programs at the same time. So it's very important that you understand that we are here to assist you. We're here to help you, okay? And we are here to improve what you're doing. So I step back in at the end just to say thank you very much. There'll be replays, obviously, on LinkedIn. We're going to follow this up with some more. We're going to continue to do these because, in my opinion, patient fortification is going to be the new, pioneering mindset. We're starting to understand that we can't beat, more ability out of our practitioners. We just can't. You guys are doing a great job, and you're improving at the pace in which our industry improves. Okay. But it's hard to keep up with the distractions. The distractions are moving faster than we can improve. Okay. So the important is let's hijack their attention and refunnel and reposition and repower that attention to some really specific end goals and some really specific abilities that we can use now to power a life set. We tell them we tell the parents that we are not only trying to improve your young adult's life, we're trying to improve your family's life for generations. And we know that's a big call. That's a big call. But we mean to do that because once we improve this base, and when we say meet people where they are, but then pull them along. Don't just try to educate, but let's move them forward up the chain. Physically move them up, physically and mentally move them up the chain. So when we meet them, we make them better as we go on. Not just with our knowledge, okay, but with the anticipation and the effort that it takes to get that done. So for myself, Richard Jones, RN, and my company, SecondStarts.com, that's the number 2, NDSTARTS.com, hosting parentingyourchildinrecovery.com, and the kingmakerprogram.com on the screen. This is where we want to be. So in closing, and I always say this, let's go out there and help somebody get better, help somebody stay better. Most importantly, let's help somebody be better. Thank you.